excited to be jumping into this with you. I think it's going to be really fun. Today is all about inspiring some other people with your story and your journey, and catching up too on everything that's happened even since your last success story and all of that. So
a lot, so much. Yes.
So it's going to be really fun today. So do you want to start just by introducing your name and where you're located and your specialty?
Yeah. So I'm Safrianna Luna, in the middle of migrating married names, but I am in Maryland, and I am a psychotherapist specializing in LGBTQ, kink, BDSM, polyamory, alternative spirituality, basically like all of the niches. So I for a while called myself the alternative therapist because, you know, all of those things kind of fall under an alternative umbrella. But lately I've been trying to embrace that it's just people authentically expressing themselves, and we shouldn't be viewing it as other, right?
Right. That it's not the alternative. It's more like, it's an option.
Yeah. And there's so many people that come to me that don't realize that it's an option to be them, which just boggles my mind. And that's what I want to bring to the world, is that sense of being authentically you.
Yeah. I think if we thought about it in terms of like housing or like where you live, like would we see it as an alternative? Like, where do you live? You're like, I live in an alternative housing situation. You're like, what's that? An apartment? Okay. Like, what does that mean? Like, you know, like, and there's some interesting things, I think, too, in terms of how we show up in the world, and some of the words coming up, like kind of the majority minority thing, and how a lot of things are alternative until the majority decides that it's okay.
Right.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, this is like super cool. And sometimes that's even like when like the white people do it or what have you. Like there's some weird stuff with that. Like it was like, what are things that that have been a part of your life but like weren't cool until then? They're like living in a trailer or living in an RV, living in a van.
Oh, I know, right?
Like,
tiny houses.
Yeah, tiny houses. I'm like, yeah, no, I did that. It was just called being poor. Like, I don't know what. Like,
and now it's posh.
And now it's like posh. And now it's like, oh, look, we're going to spend $200,000 on a 300 square foot home. You're like, okay, cool. Like whatever floats your boat. Like, that's great. Yeah. But it's an interesting, it's interesting. So let's kind of catch people up that are new to you. In terms of, when did you start your private practice, like fully solo on your own? When did that process
fully
start?
Solo on my own. Okay. So fully solo on my own was February of this year, or no, sorry. February of last year. I don't know. I went back in time there for a moment, but February, 2021, was when I completely left my agency job. I was working for a nonprofit at that time, and completely left my contract job. So I had started phasing out of both of those in December of 2020. And by February 2021, I was completely out of both of those.
And what was the last, let's talk with both sides of it. What was the last straw for the agency position when you're like, it's time to be done?
So the agency, the nonprofit, I really loved. But they just could not pay me enough for me to be able to support myself and my family. And the real straw was, I started to have a lot of health problems. I was so overworked and overstressed. I was having all these chronic pain issues. And I actually started the process of trying to get a diagnosis. And unfortunately, the diagnosis is fibromyalgia, which is, of course, the like, oh, we don't know what to do with you, so we're going to smack this label on it and acknowledge that you have pain, and good luck with that. And basically the treatment was, well, we can put you on opioids. And I thought to myself, there is no way that I can be a healer the way that I am currently while on opioids, because I know I just won't be able to be fully present, because I've seen how people that have to take them regularly can function. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, I'm going to ask for a raise. What's the process? And, I did everything. And she pulled me into her office about a week later and said, there's not grant funding this year for us to be able to give you a raise. You can maybe try again in another year. And I burst into tears in her office and I was like, okay. And so that's when I launched into the contract job, was because they couldn't pay me enough. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to augment, because I really wanted to help the population I was helping.
I think a lot of people get into that space, and it's a really hard thing when you're like so engaged in with the mission of a particular place, whether it's a nonprofit, another agency, a group practice, what have you. And it's sort of like you do the math of it and you realize like you don't have the privilege of working for that space.
Right.
Like, I remember working for a nonprofit and I was making first $15 an hour, then $16 an hour with a master's degree. And for a period of time, I had the privilege, of doing that because, I was putting myself into a little bit of debt,
right?
So there was that, like, somehow I was like, oh no, I'm just going to like check out of the fact that like, this isn't workable. I kept my expenses super duper low, just like lived really simply. And then at a certain point I had roommates and a spouse, right? So like, here are all the ways that I made sure that this was here. And then at a certain point it was, oh, my spouse doesn't have a job, the roommate has moved out, and now like I need to make another decision, and I have to really look at like what's workable for me. And I don't have that privilege anymore to say, oh, it's okay that I'm making, $300 a week or whatever it was. Like, it's just not workable.
Right. Yeah. And that was the thing with realizing I had this, health issue. I was like, okay, well, what can I do to help myself? And I started doing research and I found like float therapy. So I'm super into hydro float therapy, but it was, $100 to get a package or $140 to get a package to be able to go do that. And then I'm looking at my salary and my bills and I'm like, so paycheck to paycheck. For, again, my heart's work. It was a domestic violence agency, and I love that work. And I love working with those people because, it's part of my niche. It's part of my own story. And so I was like, I have to stay here. But then when the contract job came in, it was like, okay, well, I'm seeing more income coming in, but I'm also seeing more income going out for them. And that's when I found zynnyme, was actually like a Facebook ad for the private practice retreat. And I was like, oh, I'm not really private practice, but I'm sort of private practice, but maybe I'll see what this is all about. Cause it was, it's affordable. And that was where everything kind of shifted for me. I don't know if you want me to say more about that, but
well, I do want to say that about that part. Like when you're in there, you're working these two jobs, you're dealing with chronic pain, chronic illness, and then you see this idea of like a retreat. What were the things that you were realizing like that you were wanting? Like, what did you go into that retreat like wanting to get out of it?
I wanted to, honestly, I wanted to know that I was being successful in taking care of myself, like being successful in my business and taking care of myself. So I was like, oh, it's a retreat, self-care, right? Like that'll be good. It'll be a day away from the house and a day of telehealth, because that was, mid-pandemic. And I came out with something entirely different. Like my version of success changed so much because it made me realize that I was not taking care of myself, that I was giving way too much of myself away, for not enough return, for not enough to actually be able to take care of me genuinely.
And in like a not sustainable way, right? Like an unsustainable way. Like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm giving back, that feels good. I'm sort of kind of scraping by, like you said, paycheck to paycheck, but also in this way of like, I can't move myself out of pain. I can't figure out what works for my body. I'm given this option that like for pain management that does not fit me. And that then would obviously mean that I couldn't even do my chosen profession. So like you're in this like weird like rocket between a rock and a hard place of like damned if you do them, damned if you don't. And then you were like, wait, they're like, what if like there's a whole nother solution to all of this?
Right.
Like, and I could really truly like take care and honor my body and take good care of clients and like be okay.
Right. And the bigger picture for me has always been like, I was a public school teacher before I became a therapist. And that was actually what launched me into wanting to be, well, it was partially the kids and it was partially my own work in therapy that came together for me to want to do that work. But because of my teaching background, like I want to be able to bring my healing to more people, which of course, I think that's every therapist's plight. Like they want to take 50 clients and, you know, do good work with all of them and save the world. But we have to look at it more as a trickle effect. Like if I can affect over my lifetime, 100 people directly, like face to face directly, but then have the time and the energy, you know, the spoons to launch a digital course about healing or to do live coaching or something where I'm able to touch a broader, you know, number of people more quickly, then while also making more money that I can then give back. Right. That's the thing. Like last year. So I launched my private practice last year. And when I left my nonprofit job, I said, I'm going to donate you $1 for every client I see this year. And I stuck to that. And I think it was like 996 appointments last year. So I donated $996. Yeah. What if I could donate $2? What if I could donate $10? Like, what if I can make this bigger impact? Like we can give back to our heart causes when we value ourselves higher to take care of us and then give back. And that's the thing that I didn't really realize until part of my work with zynnyme was if I put my oxygen mask on first, then I can help so many more people. Like I last year was the first time I ever donated more than like $50 to something, you know, and that felt so huge.
It is huge. It is. And when you get, this is going to sound really weird, but when you give heart-centered people success and income, they know what to do with it. They know how to take care of it. There was something about, oh my gosh, someone was just sharing this quote. I'm terrible with quotes, but it was like, I think maybe it was the Rockefellers. I'm not sure. But the person was saying like, there's a certain point where it's not about the people that, and this was in the thing of like people having a lot of money, but it was like, this money is not there to store away. This money is there to give back to worthy causes. Yes. It's to go out and change the world. It's not meant to be something that just sits back and provides like, you know, again, there should be safety for sure, but it shouldn't just be like, I'm just going to put as much money into the bank as humanly possible, you know, whatever. It's this, like, there's a balance there of like self-care and security and like doing good. And I think like the nonprofit I was talking about was a domestic violence center. And it's been a great thing to be able to donate money to them over the years and to like know that I'm making an impact, or to know that like your donation, and it's not grant specific, could mean that they could give a raise to another therapist that was working there. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
They could go, you could say like, hey, give this to a worthy clinician, where you wouldn't normally be able to do that because you're not tying it to any of these other weird, silly things. Like it's a lovely thing now, 15 years later, to still have a relationship with that organization, and that they can go like, oh, like, thank you. Like, this is a great thing. And know that like, I can do that out of bounty and not out of like, you know, like, okay, I'm giving all my life force away.
Yeah. And that, you know, money it's energy. And when we're not giving ourselves our energy first, we drain that coffer and we don't have anything left to give to others genuinely. And that is, I think that's the magic of stepping into a self-empowered space and doing the work. I mean, obviously joining zynnyme was like the kickoff point the kickoff point was realizing I can't do this, right? And then zynnyme magically appeared at the right time for me to kind of launch into that. And the mindset shifts have been the biggest thing. And when I look at maybe peers that have joined at similar times that didn't do the self work versus, peers that do the self work, that's what it takes. It takes putting that energy into yourself first. Yeah. And that's the big, thing that I think a lot of people, we hope and we pray for a certain result without always putting the work in. We have to put the work in.
And I think this is the part is like, what we do is definitely a lot of logistics. There's a lot of like step by step, click by click. Here's how to like do the thing. But we're constantly integrating in the meditations and the self work and the other pieces, because I think that's what's missing a lot of the times. And people take it as an internal. We just say, oh, I didn't do the thing because I'm lazy. I don't want enough. Like there's something wrong with me, versus there's probably like a reason that your body is slowing you down. And if we can dig into that and explore that and remove the block, things are going to get a lot easier. And then also I think sometimes there's all the, maybe you've done the self work, it's taken care of, but then it's like, well, there's literally like some specific logistics that are really hard.
Logistics are hard.
Logistics are hard. So to like put the two things together of like, let's figure out where the blocks are. Let's figure out like how to like actually like give yourself energy, feel it, have inspiration, and then give you the step-by-steps. I think that's where it's just such a beautiful thing. So I want to go back to that, like 996 appointments this last year, right? How does it feel in your body having had that kind of an impact? What was it like to do that as a business owner? How is that? How does it feel?
I mean, it's a big number. I'd like the number to come down a little bit more, but
I was kind of thinking the same thing, to be honest. I was like,
that later.
A really big number.
It is a really big number. It's a smaller number than I would have had if I'd been in both of those other jobs, right? Like my average right now is about 22 clients a week, and I'd like to get that down to 15. And we're working on that. We are working on that. But to have a full practice, to be making a more sustainable income, to have, I have one insurance panel, and I am planning to get off of that insurance panel the beginning of next year. There's a plan in place for that. But I do have some private pay clients already. And, it was really tremendous to, again, be able to donate some money from that, but also to just realize like, hey, I did this. This was me, right? Like this was not a recruiter or an insurance company sending me clients. It was people finding me on my website. I mean, once I instituted like the things that I learned on zynnyme, I had to take myself off of Psychology Today, and I had to take myself off of Therapy Den because I was getting too many hits for my niche. Well, so I forgot to mention one of my niches. So I work with cannabis users to help them really use cannabis to improve their mental health instead of detracting from it. Because obviously there is a balance.
Yeah.
That's my number one thing that people search for.
Wow.
And I never would have guessed that until I went through zynnyme and did like the keyword searches and then started getting the analytics from my SEO and my website. And I was like, okay, wow, there's a lot more here that I can do for this population, which is, the wheels are constantly turning in my head because I'm too creative for my own good sometimes. But yeah, like when I look at, it wasn't obviously 996 people, but it was probably 30 different people over the course of the year. And the work that we did was tremendous. I had such a low turnover rate, and a high, like people buying in immediately turn in rate. Like it's incredible because I wouldn't have thought I could do that 3 years ago. Grad school did not make me think I could do that. Grad school made me think I'm going to be in an agency, or community mental health center for the rest of my life. And it'll kind of be like teaching again, you know, not really a livable salary, but I'll be doing good work. And that's so totally different to where I am now.
And maybe, I mean, grad school definitely didn't teach me about, you know, doing therapy with cannabis users and like how to do that in a way that was like pro cannabis. Grad school didn't teach me about psychedelic research or, you know, any plant medicine stuff, you know, like
that's very cool stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Like the research is freaking bonkers, like in a great way.
Yeah.
And, you know, like they didn't teach me anything about business. Most of my professors were research psychologists, and they were doing very little research, and they were doing zero clinical care. And most of them had never like met with a client. So you had, because it was a state school, right? It's kind of like mind blowing, like now looking back on it.
It is.
And I'm so glad, like, honestly, this sounds so silly. I'm really glad that I went to a state school and that I invested that amount of money and I left myself room realistically to go and get higher level certifications and trainings. If I had gone to a private school, that like there would have been no room for me, you know, like I didn't have that kind of crazy support where I could go and pay, you know, $600 a unit for a whole grad program or $1,000 a unit, you know, all of these things. Like there's no way I could have done that. And, you know, coming out with, you know, $100,000 in student loans, like that would have just wrecked me.
That's almost where I'm at, but not quite.
But that's the piece is like, and nobody tells you that. And then there's this expectation afterwards that you're going to invest in all these certifications and trainings. And I tell everyone, you know what, get the cheapest education you have. And if you're going to invest in all the stuff that comes after that.
And I think that's great advice, honestly. I do.
I know that it's kind of crazy. And I love that there are clinical programs that do really good, deep work. But at the same time, it's always going to be surface past a certain point because of what you have to cover. They have to cover surface stuff and they're not going to go as deep. You're not going to go as deep until you get out of school. So don't pay like you're getting a deeper, like a super deep education, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, even when I was going through the zynnyme modules, like early on, there was stuff in there that was clinical that I'd never even had covered in grad school, like so much of the self-work piece and like boundaries and how important professional boundaries are in doing good professional work. Like seriously.
Well, that's why we have CEs for business school, you know, is like, it is clinical pieces. And I think that's the part that a lot of people don't understand is that if you just kind of go down the process of starting a business, and if you don't have awareness of it, it's going to impact the clinical stuff. It's going to take you out of your code of ethics. Right. Like, and you know, ethic violations, I don't think they come like overnight. They come from a series of small decisions over time that set people up for making egregious. You know, my brain's like egregious decisions in a moment, you know, but usually there's been a pattern of behavior that has happened over time that people really think is okay because no one has been around to check them and tell them. And when we get into like good quality communities where people are having like deep conversations about these things, I think it's so powerful. I mean, that's one of the things I love in business school is that people will post and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing. You know, like I've seen posts where people are like, I haven't done documentation in a really long time and I don't know how to pull myself out of it. And the safety where people are able to say, I did the same thing and here's how I did it and I got you and it's going to be okay. Like that is the thing that moves the needle, not someone posting that in a Facebook group and getting shamed and, you know, attacked with no like help and support, you know, which is what I see a lot out there.
Yes. And it's ironic that we're streaming on Facebook because I'm currently on a tech detox from social media for reasons exactly like that. Like, I've heard so many horror stories of clients coming to me that bring up just, oh, I saw a therapist before and then they said XYZ to me. And I'm like, they said what? Right? Like, especially about the LGBTQ community and bisexual people in particular, but that's a whole soapbox I won't get on right now. But there needs to be safe spaces for people to ask, for therapists and other clinicians to ask questions about that without being shamed. And we do see that so much in the communities that exist out there. And that is one thing that's really nice about zynnyme is I haven't seen any of that. It's supportive. It's here's a resource. It's, grab this link. And that's really nice to see because, my big life philosophy is that when we're centered in our peace and we're speaking from a place of self-empowerment and not shaming others, because I think shaming others is a reflection of ourselves. Like we trickle out that peace into other people. They see that it's an option. And the more healers that step into that, and again, even if they only impact 20 people, if one person from that group of 20 people then goes out and impacts 20 people in a positive, peace-centered way, like we start to have this incredible ripple effect.
Yeah.
And that's what we need in our world right now. And I'm so glad, like I wouldn't have been able to have any sort of platform like that and share that message with, beyond my inner circle, if I hadn't had the bravery, the courage to step out into my own power. And I really hope that more and more people start to do that. I have the, I don't compete, I stand out sticker literally right here. And I look at it every day and I do a breathing practice with an incredible therapist named Alicia Barman every morning at like 7:30. And we sometimes have to have a focal point, and that's my focal point. I'm like, I don't compete, I stand out. Right. And we all just need to do that because we all have our own beautiful thing to shine out into the world, I believe.
Yeah. And again, back to that quote, right? Healed people heal people. Right.
Yes.
Hurt people. And I think our profession, unfortunately, hurts a lot of our healers.
Right.
We wear people down. The nonprofit that I worked at, I had amazing supervisors, like clinical and agency, amazing. And my agency supervisor was like so dead honest. She said, we will absolutely support your need for boundaries and self-care absolutely every time, but we will reward your lack thereof. Right? And she said it in a way of like, we understand and we're trying to do better. But it was this thing of like, what happens? Like, if you don't have boundaries and self-care, you get promoted, you get this, you get that, you get praise. Like, we literally praise people stepping outside of themselves. And then when the person has the obvious reaction to that, which is they start to burn out, then we shame and we use them as an example. Right? Like,
it's not okay.
It's not okay. So I think that's the piece. And because that's so prevalent in our profession, you look around for how am I supposed to be? You look for models and mentors, and to find a healthy model and find a healthy mentor is really difficult. Right. Even though there's amazing people in this work, amazing people. It's just that there's not enough spaces where people have gotten the support that they need. So everyone's like kind of like doing the best they can to just like get through it. Okay. So enough about that. Cause we were just talking about that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the juiciest conversation. Like, I love it. So let's talk about like what life looks like. I mean, starting in February, being full, having too many clients, you have your plan for like, hey, there's this one insurance panel that I like, but like not enough to keep it forever. Here's my plan over here. What else is next for you with your full, successful clients you love practice? What do you have next?
So the big thing I'm working on now that I'm not working as much, is I have more time to write and I have more time to do content creation. So my next big thing, I just launched something called the Rise course. and we'll see what happens with that. It's sort of it's a practice run, but I think it's also really important to reach the people that it needs to reach. It's a self-care and coping program. Because I know there are a lot of people right now that are looking for therapists and cannot find them because so many people are full. And that's what it's intended to be, is like you need immediate coping and self-care tools. Here it is. But ironically enough, what's next for me is being able to do more spiritually oriented, hopefully coaching, because the therapy side can sustain, especially now that I am making more money off of it, which is opening up my time to pursue my passions. And I'm really excited about that, because I did my first painting recently for the first time in years, because I had the time and the space. I just bought a house. Like, I just bought my first home. And that's all because I branched out into private practice. So that's like, I don't know exactly where I'm going next, but the plan is to develop this sort of spiritual inner healing, ascension work, et cetera, over the next like 6 months and see where that goes. And otherwise, my wife, non-binary, they, them, just so that people don't get confused when I say they are going to be licensed in July, roughly. And then that's going to be when I'm probably going to start going off of insurance panels. Cause right now, obviously, breadwinner, want to play it a little safe. But once we have 2 incomes coming in, I'm going to get really bold. So really, really bold. That'll be exciting.
I love that. I think this is the part too. I love that you're in a place of, wow, I love this and I love that, and I need to create space for me to explore these other things. And not from a place of, sometimes there's a tendency in our profession that like, it's kind of how you started before. Okay, I'm working in this agency and I'm not getting enough money. So I'm going to work in this group practice and I'm still not making enough money. So I'm going to do my own practice on the side and I'm going to do multiple streams of income. What we're talking about is I'm going to try to side hustle and overwork my way to having a sustainable life. And then when I burn out, I'm going to feel shame that I didn't do any of them well.
Right.
And then I'm going to use this as a verification that whatever my core belief is, right? Like, I am bad, I'm unworthy, I'm shameful, I shouldn't exist, whatever the thing is, I'm going to just fire that up. And then, again, go through this whole thing versus like, oh, I am enough, right? I am enough just as I am. Let me create something that really sustains me, and realize that that painting was just as important to your clinical work as the hour with the client.
Right.
Your ability to model and live that out allows you to be fully present with your client and allows you to really speak to life balance from a place of truth versus from a place of, you really need to make time for painting. And in the back of my head, I realize that I'm being inauthentic.
Right.
And I'm not really being vulnerable because I haven't even gone to the bathroom today and I need to pee like a racehorse, but I'm telling them that they should take some time off and set boundaries at work. And I'm setting no boundaries for myself.
Yes.
What is going on? How does that truly impact the relationship and the attunement when I'm literally living out a lie?
Yes. And that is such a big thing. The more authentic we are in ourselves and our boundaries and being firm with ourselves, walking the walk, not just talking the talk to the clients, the more our clients succeed and thrive and do so many beautiful things because they can feel that heartfelt message and confidence in our residents, even in telehealth. I firmly believe that, because we can attune digitally. I think it took 2 solid years of this for people to get that technology is this beautiful tool that can connect
Mhm.
people from anywhere in the world at any time. You just
Mhm.
have to authentically show up. You have to be present, because when you're present, it doesn't matter how far away you are.
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm.
I wasn't even present to myself for, some of my earlier career. So how could I really show up for someone else? So,
And I do think it's interesting that we often we can blame the technology
mhm,
when it is a reflection of ourselves, because the idea of like in this moment, right, you're on the top of my screen and I can see myself in the bottom, and that took me a minute to like be able to like manage, right? It's like, oh, like there's like this thing of like, and a lot of therapists will say like it's really distracting to see myself.
mhm.
Isn't that interesting? It's distracting to be see yourself, to realize you're being seen, to
Yes.
like see who you are, versus like, oh, I like the fact that I can see how my client or my partner sees me, and I have an
Mhm.
obvious interaction, and that like if I'm attuned in my body in this moment, like I can feel, right, when like we're in a space together, like
Right.
it's not even just like, oh, we're having like an emotional connection. When we vibe on something, like I know exactly where I feel it in my
Right.
body. It's from here to here, like from like my belly button, up into my solar plexus, like there's like this far from up above my belly button, like that's the spot. And like that's an important thing to know, but again, we're not training our therapists how to be in their body and be embodied,
Right.
because when therapists get in their body, they say, this is painful, it doesn't feel good, and I might need to set some boundaries. And if we have therapists with boundaries, then we don't have a workforce that will work for something unsustainable anymore.
Right. And it's so funny that I don't know that funny is the right word, but we so actively try to avoid our discomfort while burning ourselves to the ground.
Uh-huh.
And now that I'm more embodied and I lean more into my discomfort, it's not there as much. And that's
Right.
that's the thing that I think so many people will like, they just don't want to accept that that could be a thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what if I accept this discomfort? And that might be physical discomfort, it might be discomfort of being seen, it might
Yeah.
be discomfort of putting yourself out there, of raising your fee, of making your website, whatever. But when we lean into it eases up. It's like I was terrified to be on this. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And then, the inner voice is like, yeah, you can. Um, and once I'm here, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the 30 seconds of courage, the
Yeah.
getting that initial step done, the investing in yourself,
Yeah.
whether that's time, money, energy, whatever.
Yeah. I think there's something to that too. I think also like realizing like it's data, right? And I love that you said like, oh my gosh, there was all this feeling coming up, and I don't remember the exact word, but like you checked in with yourself and you're like, no, I can do this. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, oh, what is this? Is this like real stuff? Is this real intuition saying this is not for you? And you're like, no, it's like I can do this, but it's new and it feels scary.
Right.
Okay, cool. Like I can lean through that, and then that feels good, right? Like, and I think too, there's other times where it's like that information is coming in that's saying, I can't do this. And you check in and you're like, is that true? That it's like, yes, no, like this is enough. And I need to say no.
Right.
And like the more that you ignore that intuition that says, this is not for you, and then you pass that up, then I think it starts to get louder in your body. And I do think it starts to change form.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts to change form until we listen.
Mm.
And I think that there is something about, and I know this is a kind of a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but autoimmune conditions, I have one. So I'm not just judging others. Like I can say that this is true for myself. I think a lot of autoimmune conditions that are rampant in therapist communities are really like conversions of chronic stress and trauma that we have held and pushed down in our bodies, and that we are exposing ourselves on a regular basis without
Mm-hmm.
creating ways to, the word that came to me was off gas, but that's like a weird word. It's sort of like, hey, like there's a lot of like paint fumes in here. Like we need to like open the windows and have a breeze because like
Yes.
maybe this is okay that we're doing this work. Like it's important, but like we can't sit in this room in this space and be around that 24 hours a day or we will die. Like there's something about being able to like move it through our system. And we're not taught how to do that. We're not taught how to move other people's trauma through our system, how to even maybe engage with the trauma in a way where we're fully present, but where we're not taking it in, but we can be there with it, where we can like touch it and feel it from like a little bit away.
Right.
Like there's so much that I'm definitely still learning about that process of like, what does that really feel like to like, even to like, almost like, this is going to sound so weird. I love that we're having this weird conversation, by the way. I hope you are too.
I do too. Hey, I embrace my weird.
I don't care if anyone is like listening or enjoying this. Like I'm enjoying the hell of it. The vision that came up for me was the idea of like being able to like put something in my mouth, like kind of like taste it and then be like, oh, okay. And then like spit it out and like not take it into my system or like to like touch something and hold it and like rub it around and be like, oh, how does that feel? Like, oh, it feels warm. It feels wet, what have you. But like, it's not something where I need to like cut open my skin and like do it and like sew it up. And that's feels like a lot of what we do. It's like, we like stick it in and then we're like, oh, that hurts. Let me sew a patch over it.
Yeah. Let me cover this up and just bury it and not, we just won't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And as a parts therapist, I can say that is very false. Like good luck with that. Cause it's not going to work.
Not going to work for you long term.
But I agree with your unpopular opinion for the record. Like I am right there with you that I mean, doing parts work. One of the most important things that I've learned to do is to tune into my body and listen to what the intuition is saying, or if there is a random pain, like I'll get a random pain like here, and then I get a random pain in my foot. The pain in the foot is always slow down. And it always happens when I'm rushing, of course. And it's a reminder, slow down, right? And then the pain up here is the being afraid to be seen. And I think that if more therapists can tune into their bodies, more helpers, healers, whatever, can just tune into their own signals and listen to that data. And I call it data all the time too. There's no good or bad information. It's just information. It's just data. And we can look at that and go, oh, do I like that trend? Do I not like that trend? What could I do to kind of steer into a different course? We have to reflect on what's working and not working within us.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So what advice would you give to other therapists that are kind of where you were when you found zynnyme and you're trying to like figure it out and like trying to piece it together? What would you tell them?
You know, I would ask them to really dig into what they want their life to look like. Because that was probably the most magical practice in zynnyme was the ideal day. What's your perfect day? So what is your perfect day? What does living an embodied life look like for you? And then seeing the places where it's currently not matching up with that, because we have the power at any point to make a different decision for ourselves. And we need to remember that we have control over ourselves within us. There's nothing out here that can genuinely control us. And do the work to believe in yourself. Have that 30 seconds of courage that it takes to say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to think about what's working and not working, and know that you are worth it. Like we are all worth it. We just have to be able to tap into that belief. And you are enough. And you probably have enough. That's another thing. I think sometimes we lose sight that the life that we want is not that far out of our reach, but we perceive this giant chasm between us and our goals. So really being able to sink into what is working and what's not working, and know that you have that power to step off that path if it's not working for you.
Yeah, there's this, I have this kind of meditation playlist that has just songs that like are resonating with me at the
Mhm.
moment that help me. And one of them was like, I have everything that I need. And I think that that place of like really stepping into that, whether it's from like an emotional standpoint, a physical standpoint, like an inner resource, a strength standpoint, like I have what I need to be healed and healthy and parent and
Mhm.
support and coach and all the other things that I do. Like
Right.
I have that. I just need to give myself access to it. You
Yeah.
know, it's
And that's so tremendous. And I'm really excited because I'm finally offering coaching around time magic, like working. I call myself the chronomancer. Like we need to work our time in a way that actually supports us.
yeah,
And that, I think, looking back, is the number one thing that I was not controlling, even though it's mine to control, is time.
mm,
So that would be another piece of advice. Like, take charge of your time.
yeah,
You're the one that sets your schedule.
yeah.
Like
And
if
you're
you're working a
valuable
job that's,
enough.
yeah.
Yeah, like
If,
you're worthy of that to say no and to say you have this is the amount of hours I have per week. And that includes things like sleeping and going to the bathroom and like making yourself meals. Like the
yes.
amount of times that people go through like our time management stuff in zynnyme and go, oh, I realized that like I didn't leave myself time to sleep or eat.
Yeah. Like
Right?
what,
Like
what?
like what a
Yeah.
magical thing. Like I really didn't like why I'm always having UTIs. I literally don't go to the bathroom. Like, whatever the thing is. Like
Mhm.
there's some really, I'm sure there is someone that's going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, I just feel personally attacked. Like what's going
Yes.
on? But this is the stuff that like that happens. Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
I know that we have to wrap up. I know you've got other things going on in terms of life balance, but I so appreciate you being here. What
Yeah.
would you like to say about business school for therapists for anybody that's on the fence about it since it's opening up this
Oh
week?
boy, do it. Hands down, do it. Like, honest to goodness, I am a frugal person. When I saw I'm going to be fully honest. When I saw
Yeah.
the price tag on Zynnyme, I was like, oh shit, I can't do that. Oh, sorry. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but it's authentic me. I did it, and I remember saying to one of my partners, like, this is the best investment I've ever made. I have learned more in this than I did in grad school. Not obviously about like all of the clinical stuff, but like how to be a therapist and run a practice and manage my time and my money and my resources and all of that. And it was just incredible. And to just, summarize where I was, I'm that grad student with $75,000 in student loan debt, living in an apartment, miserable relationship, like all of those things, working too many hours, to happily multi-partnered because polyamory, uh, and owning my own home. Just launched a digital course. My wife and I have a podcast now about therapy and mental health and being authentic. I have my own cute little home office, which the starfish is like the client's favorite thing ever, so it has to live here. Like I live down the street from a park. None of this would have been something that I believed I could do. I'm not going to say it was all zynnyme. Like you guys didn't come in and do this for me. I had to do it for me, but you provided me with that framework to make that happen. So if anybody's on the fence, it's like, if you need that hand holding for a couple of months, like that's what I needed. I just needed somebody to guide me through it. And it's like, now I'm able to take off on my own to the point where I feel confident enough to even help other clinicians get to that point. And so you are enough, and invest in yourself. Like, you are worth that.
I love that. Okay. I'm going to ask one more question just
Okay.
because you brought that up. You said you looked at the price. You're like, absolutely not. I cannot do this. And you're like, and I did it anyways. Why? What was the thing that like made you do it anyways?
So being the skeptic that I am, I engaged in your free trainings. I did the lower cost retreat day. I was like, okay, are they worth my money? Right? Like, is this for real? Because then the price tag, right? Um, I got the data for myself. I saw that you were legitimate, and I said, okay, this is all the information I could choose to have. Do I want to have that right now? And the answer was yes. Like, there was an abundance of information I needed there. And there are so many people that do take advantage out there. I remember buying like some blueprint, and it was only $25, and I asked for a refund because I got it and it was not even worth $2. And I was appalled. And like,
You're like, it was just a list of like what we cover in boot camp.
it wasn't even that. It was awful. I was like, you're selling this, you're trying to make money, and like I won't soapbox there, but yeah, what made me decide was trying it on for myself. Like, if someone's on the fence, go watch a zynnyme pre-recorded training that's been done before. Go join the private practice community, the free one, like, and see what's there, because you're gonna get 5,000 times that value in the program. Like, it's genuinely, legitimately good information. And I felt so good. Like, when this whole, what was it? GFE, the good faith estimate thing happened. I found out about that in the middle of my Christmas vacation, which was my first vacation in like 3 years, for the record, because I'm finally making enough money to take a darn vacation. And I like popped on zynnyme. I was like, I know they'll have it. I know they've got my back. Popped on there, saw the little write-up, was like, oh, I've got this. And like, it took me maybe an hour to get it all done. Like, it was there. It's a support. It's a support I know I have forever now. Like, that's huge too. And I know that updates are going to keep happening, and all that beautiful stuff. So yeah, do it.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for being brave and like getting the courage for that first 30 seconds of the thing. And I'm so excited about what you're doing and moving forward. And enjoy your home and enjoy the park and time for the park and the painting and all the things and your beautiful life with your beautiful wife. And like, you know, that you and they can like really just live into that. Yeah. That
lean in.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, you all, check us out, zynnyme.com. You can just click on boot camp and find out more, because we are in it. We're opening the doors this week, y'all. Until next time. Bye.